The invasion. In the depths of space, the Zorgan Empire had set its sights on a new target, Earth. Emperor Tarkul, the ruthless leader of the Zorgans, stood on the bridge of his colossal warship, gazing upon the blue planet with disdain. To him and his people, humans were nothing more than primitive creatures, barely worth acknowledging. These weaklings pose no threat to us, Exar Cole declared to his council. Their technology is laughable, their bodies frail. We shall conquer them swiftly and claim their world for the glory of the Zorgan Empire. The council members nodded in agreement, their eyes gleaming with anticipation of an easy victory. Admiral Zortak, the Emperor's trusted military strategist, stepped forward. "My lord, allow me to send a recon team to the surface. They will gather intelligence on the humans' defenses and prepare the way for our invasion force." Exar Cole waved his hand dismissively. "Very well, Admiral, but make haste. I want this planet under our control within a matter of days." As the council dispersed, Admiral Zortak selected his finest warriors for the recon mission. Led by Captain Kazlar, a battle-hardened veteran, the team boarded a sleek, stealth ship and descended towards Earth's surface, aiming for a dense jungle region where their arrival would go unnoticed. However, as the Zorgans entered Earth's atmosphere, they soon realized that this planet was unlike any they had encountered before. The dense jungle teemed with life, an endless sea of green that seemed to pulse with an almost sentient energy. Strange animal calls echoed through the trees, and the air was thick with humidity. Upon landing, Captain Kazlar and his team disembarked, their high-tech armor gleaming in the dappled sunlight that filtered through the canopy. They moved cautiously, scanning their surroundings for any signs of human activity. But as they ventured deeper into the jungle, they encountered dangers they had never anticipated. Massive predatory beasts, camouflaged amongst the foliage, stalked the Zorgans, seeing them as easy prey. Poisonous insects swarmed around them, their bites penetrating even the toughest armor. And the very plants seemed to come alive, their vines ensnaring the warriors' legs and dragging them into the undergrowth. One by one, Kazlar's team fell victim to the jungle's perils. Some were devoured by the beasts, their screams cut short as powerful jaws crushed their bodies. Others succumbed to the potent venom of the insects, their lifeless forms convulsing on the forest floor. And those ensnared by the vines were never seen again, pulled into the depths of the jungle. Captain Kazlar fought on, his plasma rifle blazing as he cut through the foliage. But even he could not escape unscathed. A massive serpent, its scales shimmering with an iridescent sheen, coiled itself around him, its fangs sinking deep into his flesh. Kazlar cried out in agony, his vision blurring as the venom coursed through his veins. Just as he felt his consciousness slipping away, a figure emerged from the shadows. A human female, clad in green and brown combat fatigues, her dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. She moved with the grace and power of a jungle cat, dispatching the serpent with a well-aimed shot from her rifle. As Kazlar collapsed to the ground, his life ebbing away, the human approached him. She knelt beside him, her brown eyes filled with a mix of curiosity and concern. "Hold on," she said softly, her voice carrying an almost hypnotic quality. "I've got you." With that, Sergeant Lexi Tanaka, unaware of the impending invasion, hefted the wounded Zorgan over her shoulder and began the trek back to her base camp, deep in the heart of the jungle. Little did either of them know, this chance encounter would change the course of both their lives and the fate of two worlds. As Kazlar drifted in and out of consciousness, he couldn't help but wonder, if this was just one human, what hope did the Zorgan Empire have against an entire planet of them? Earth, it seemed, was far more than meets the eye. A world that forged its inhabitants into something far greater than the Zorgans had ever imagined. The invasion was coming, but the humans, tempered by the crucible of their own world, would not go down without a fight. For Earth was more than just a planet. It was a training ground, a gauntlet that honed the skills and spirits of all who called it home. And the Zorgans were about to learn this lesson the hard way. Uneasy alliance. Sergeant Lexi Tanaka moved swiftly through the jungle, the wounded Zorgan draped over her shoulders. Despite his alien physiology, she could feel the warmth of his blood seeping through her uniform. She knew she had to act fast if she wanted to keep him alive. As she approached the base camp, hidden beneath the canopy of towering trees, Lexi called out to the sentries, "Medic, I need a medic over here now." The camp burst into activity, soldiers emerging from tents and rushing to her aid. They stared in disbelief at the creature she carried, its armor unlike anything they had ever seen. Lexi ignored their questioning gazes and carried Kazalar to the medical tent, where she gently laid him on a cot. The medics, though initially hesitant, quickly set to work, their training overriding their apprehension. They carefully removed Kazalar's armor, revealing the extent of his injuries. Deep puncture wounds marred his scaly skin, and a sickly green venom oozed from the gashes. For hours, the medics worked tirelessly, cleaning the wounds and administering antidotes. Lexi remained by Kazalar's side, watching as his chest rose and fell with each labored breath. She couldn't help but feel a sense of responsibility for the alien warrior, having saved him from certain death in the jungle. As the sun dipped below the horizon and the jungle came alive with the sounds of nocturnal creatures, Kazalar's eyes fluttered open. He blinked, his vision slowly coming into focus. When he saw Lexi, he instinctively reached for his weapon, only to find it missing. "Easy there," Lexi said softly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You're safe. We're not going to hurt you." Kazalar stared at her, confusion etched across his reptilian features. "Why?" he rasped, his voice weak. "Why did you save me?" Lexi smiled, a warm, genuine expression that caught Kazalar off guard. "It's what we do. We don't leave anyone behind, not even an alien." Over the next few days, as Kazalar recovered, he found himself questioning everything he had ever believed about humans. The kindness and compassion they showed him, even though he was an enemy, went against everything the Zorgan Empire had taught him. As his strength returned, Kazalar knew he had a decision to make. He requested to speak with the human military leaders, a request that was granted with no small amount of caution. In a tent lit by flickering lanterns, Kazalar stood before a group of hardened officers, Lexi by his side. "The Zorgan Empire is coming," he said, his voice grave. "They plan to invade Earth, to conquer your world and enslave your people." The officers exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of shock and grim determination. "Why are you telling us this?" one of them asked, his eyes narrowing in suspicion. Kazalar met the man's gaze, his own eyes unwavering. "Because I have seen the strength and spirit of your people. You saved my life, even though I was your enemy. That is not something the Zorgan Empire would ever do." He took a deep breath, the weight of his next words heavy on his shoulders. "I offer you my knowledge, my skills, to help you defend your world. In return, I ask only for the chance to learn from you, to understand what makes your species so remarkable." The officers deliberated, their voices low and urgent. Finally, they turned to Kazalar, their decision made. "We accept your offer," the leader said, his voice firm. "But know this, if you betray us, there will be no mercy." Kazalar nodded, a solemn agreement. And thus, an uneasy alliance was born, one that would change the course of the coming war. As the preparations for the invasion began, Lexi was assigned to work closely with Kazalar, to learn everything she could about Zorgan tactics and weaknesses. The two spent long hours together, poring over maps and strategizing. At first, their relationship was one of mutual wariness, a tentative trust born of necessity. But as they worked side by side, a bond began to form. Lexi found herself fascinated by Kazalar's stories of his world, of the harsh beauty of his home planet, and the rigid structure of Zorgan society. And Kazalar, in turn, was drawn to Lexi's fierce determination and unwavering loyalty to her people. Together, they forged a partnership that went beyond mere military strategy. They became a symbol of hope, a testament to the power of understanding and cooperation in the face of overwhelming odds. As the days turned into weeks and the Zorgan invasion drew ever closer, Lexi and Kazlar knew that the fate of both their worlds rested on their shoulders. They had to be ready, for when the Zorgans came, they would come with all the fury of an empire scorned. But the humans had something the Zorgans could never understand: the indomitable spirit forged in the crucible of Earth itself. And with Kazlar by their side, they would face this threat as they had faced every challenge before, with courage, determination, and the unbreakable bonds of friendship and trust. The battle for Earth was coming, and the humans would be ready. For they were the children of Earth, tempered by the trials of their world, and they would not go gentle into that good night. Preparing for battle. As news of the impending Zorgan invasion spread, the nations of Earth put aside their differences and united in the face of a common threat. Armies were mobilized, weapons were stockpiled, and cities were fortified. The human race, for the first time in its history, stood as one. At the heart of these preparations were Sergeant Lexi Tanaka and Kazlar, the unlikely duo who had become the linchpin of Earth's defense. Their knowledge and skills were invaluable, guiding the strategies and training of the human forces. Under Kazlar's guidance, human scientists and engineers worked tirelessly to reverse engineer Zorgan technology, seeking to level the playing field. Plasma rifles, energy shields, and advanced sensors were replicated and distributed to the front lines, giving the human soldiers a fighting chance against the superior Zorgan weapons. But it was not just technology that Kazlar brought to the table. He also shared his knowledge of Zorgan tactics and weaknesses, revealing the chinks in their armor that could be exploited. And as he worked alongside the humans, he began to see the true strength of their species, not in their weapons or machines, but in their spirit and adaptability. To better understand this strength, Lexi took Kazlar on a journey across the Earth, visiting the most extreme and challenging environments the planet had to offer. From the scorching deserts of the Sahara to the frozen wastes of Antarctica, from the crushing depths of the ocean to the thin air of the Himalayas, they saw firsthand how humans had learned to thrive in conditions that would kill most other species. Kazlar was amazed by what he saw. In the desert, he watched as human nomads navigated the endless dunes with ease, their bodies adapted to conserve water and withstand the blistering heat. In the Arctic, he saw scientists and explorers braving the bone-chilling cold, their technology and ingenuity allowing them to study and survive in one of the harshest environments on the planet. And in the mountains, he witnessed human climbers scaling vertical walls of rock and ice, their strength and determination pushing them to heights that seemed impossible. With each new environment, each new challenge, Kazlar's respect for the human race grew. Lexi, too, found herself changing as she traveled with Kazlar. She saw her world through new eyes, appreciating the wonders and diversity of Earth in a way she never had before. And as they faced the challenges of each new environment together, the bond between them deepened, moving beyond friendship and into something more. In the quiet moments between their adventures, Lexi and Kazlar would sit together, sharing stories of their pasts and their hopes for the future. Kazlar spoke of his life in the Zorgan Empire, of the rigid hierarchies and brutal training that had shaped him. And Lexi spoke of her own journey, of the events that had led her to become a soldier and the values that drove her to protect her world. Through these conversations, they found a common ground, a shared understanding of the importance of honor, loyalty, and sacrifice. And as the day of the invasion drew nearer, they knew that these values would be put to the ultimate test. Back at the base camp, the preparations continued at a fevered pace. Soldiers drilled constantly, honing their skills and tactics. Engineers worked around the clock, building and repairing weapons and equipment. And in the command center, generals and strategists pored over maps and intelligence reports, seeking any advantage they could find. Kazlar and Lexi were at the center of it all, their expertise and leadership guiding the human forces. They worked tirelessly, pushing themselves to the limit, knowing that the fate of the world rested on their shoulders. And as the final days before the invasion ticked away, a sense of calm determination settled over the base. They were as ready as they could be, armed with the knowledge, technology, and spirit that Earth had given them. The Zorgans were coming with all the might of their empire, but the humans would not cower in fear. They would stand tall, united in their resolve, ready to defend their home to the last breath. For they were the guardians of Earth, the protectors of all that was good and right in their world. And with Lexi and Kazlar leading the way, they would face the darkness and emerge victorious, no matter the cost. The battle for Earth was about to begin, and the humans were ready. They had been trained by the greatest teacher of all, Earth itself, and they would not fail. For in the end, it was not just their world they were fighting for, but the very future of their species. And in that fight, they would discover strengths they never knew they had, forging a legacy that would echo through the ages. The Zorgans had come to conquer, but they would find only defeat at the hands of the indomitable human spirit. The battle for Earth. The sky above Earth was filled with the ominous shapes of Zorgan warships, their hulls gleaming in the sunlight. The invasion had begun, and the fate of the planet hung in the balance. On the ground, human forces mobilized, taking up defensive positions around key cities and installations. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they had the advantage of knowing the terrain and the tactics of their enemy. Leading the defense was Sergeant Lexi Tanaka, her face set in grim determination as she surveyed the battlefield. Beside her stood Kazlar, his Zorgan armor now bearing the insignia of the human forces. Together, they had planned and prepared for this moment, and now it was time to put those plans into action. As the first wave of Zorgan troops landed, the humans sprang their trap. Hidden snipers picked off the alien soldiers as they emerged from their dropships, while artillery rained down on their positions. The Zorgans, unused to facing such fierce resistance, fell back in disarray. But the humans knew that this was only the beginning. The real battle would be fought in the cities, where the Zorgans' superior technology and numbers would be brought to bear. In the streets of New York, London, and Tokyo, human soldiers engaged in brutal urban warfare, using the very buildings and infrastructure of their cities as weapons. They lured the Zorgans into narrow alleys and dead ends, where they could be ambushed and overwhelmed. They used the subway tunnels and sewers to move unseen, striking at the enemy from unexpected angles. Kazlar fought alongside the humans, his knowledge of Zorgan tactics proving invaluable. He led strike teams deep into enemy lines, sabotaging weapons and communications, sowing chaos and confusion in the Zorgan ranks. But for all their bravery and skill, the humans were being pushed back. The Zorgans' numbers seemed endless, and their weapons grew more powerful with each passing day. It was clear that the humans needed a decisive victory, a way to strike at the heart of the Zorgan command. That opportunity came when human intelligence discovered the location of the Zorgan flagship, the nerve center of their invasion. If they could take out the flagship, it would throw the entire Zorgan force into disarray. Lexi and Kazlar volunteered to lead the mission, knowing that it was a suicide run. They gathered a small team of their best soldiers and set out, infiltrating the flagship under the cover of a diversionary attack. Inside the massive ship, they fought their way through hordes of Zorgan warriors, their weapons blazing. Kazlar used his knowledge of the ship's layout to guide them, leading them ever closer to the command bridge. But as they neared their goal, they were confronted by Emperor Tsar Kul himself, flanked by his elite guard. The Emperor was a formidable warrior, his skills honed by centuries of conquest and war. Lexi and Kazlar fought side by side, their movements perfectly synchronized. They had come to know each other's strengths and weaknesses, and they used that knowledge to deadly effect. But even they were no match for the Emperor's power. In a moment of desperation, as Tsar Kul's blade descended towards Lexi's heart, Kazlar threw himself in front of her, taking the blow meant for her. He fell to the floor, his lifeblood spilling out onto the cold metal. Lexi, enraged and grief-stricken, launched herself at the Emperor with a fury she had never known. Their blades clashed in a shower of sparks, the fate of two worlds hanging in the balance. And in that moment, something changed. The Zorgan soldiers, seeing their Emperor locked in mortal combat with a mere human, began to waver. They had been taught that humans were weak, inferior beings, but here was one fighting with a strength and skill that matched their own. That hesitation was all Lexi needed. With a final, desperate thrust, she drove her blade into Xarkul's heart, ending his reign of terror once and for all. As the Emperor fell, the Zorgan forces fell into chaos. Without their leader, they were directionless, confused. The humans, seizing the moment, pressed their advantage, driving the invaders back to their ships and off the planet. The battle was over. Earth had been saved, but at a terrible cost. Lexi knelt beside Kazalar's body, tears streaming down her face. He had given his life for her world, and she would never forget that sacrifice. As the smoke of battle cleared and the wounded were tended to, the humans came to realize the true extent of their victory. They had not just defeated the Zorgans, but they had proven to themselves and to the galaxy that they were a force to be reckoned with. Earth was not just a world, but a crucible, a training ground that had forged them into something greater than they ever could have imagined. And as they looked to the stars, they knew that this was only the beginning. For Lexi and for all of humanity, the future was bright with possibility. They had faced the darkness and emerged stronger, united in a common purpose. They were the guardians of Earth, and they would never back down from a fight. In the years to come, they would reach out to the stars, seeking new allies and new adventures. And always, they would remember the lessons they had learned, the strength they had found within themselves. For Earth had made them who they were, and they would never forget that. They were humans, the children of the greatest training ground in the universe, and they were ready for whatever the future might bring. A new era. In the aftermath of the Zorgan invasion, Earth was forever changed. The scars of battle were still fresh, the ruins of cities still smoldering, but amidst the destruction, there was a sense of hope, of possibility. The human race had been united as never before, forged in the crucible of war into a single, unbreakable whole. Old rivalries and divisions had been swept away, replaced by a newfound sense of purpose and destiny. Sergeant Lexi Tanaka, now hailed as a hero of the resistance, found herself at the center of this new world. She was a symbol of Earth's defiance, a living embodiment of the strength and resilience of the human spirit. But for Lexi, the victory was bittersweet. The loss of Kazalar weighed heavily on her, a constant reminder of the price that had been paid for their triumph. She often found herself at his grave, a simple marker amid the rubble of the final battle, speaking to him as if he could still hear her. "We did it, Kaz," she would say, her voice soft and filled with emotion. "We saved Earth, just like you always knew we could. But it wasn't worth losing you. Nothing could ever be worth that." As the weeks turned into months, and the months into years, Earth began to rebuild. Cities were reconstructed, their skylines once again reaching towards the heavens. The technology of the Zorgans, once feared and reviled, was adapted and repurposed for the betterment of all. Under Lexi's leadership, the human military evolved into a force for exploration and diplomacy, reaching out to the stars in search of new allies and new frontiers. They had learned the hard lessons of the Zorgan invasion, and they were determined never to be caught unprepared again. Central to this effort was the establishment of a new training program, modeled after the very challenges and environments that had made Earth such a formidable adversary. Recruits from across the planet were brought together, forged in the same crucible that had produced warriors like Lexi and Kazalar. They trained in the deserts and the jungles, in the mountains and the oceans. They learned to survive and to thrive in the harshest conditions imaginable, pushing themselves to the very limits of human endurance. And as they trained, they also learned the values that had carried humanity through its darkest hour: courage, sacrifice, unity. They became more than soldiers. They became the guardians of a new era, the protectors of a world that had been forever changed. Years passed, and Earth became known throughout the galaxy as a beacon of hope and strength. Other species, once wary and distrustful, now saw out the wisdom and alliance of the humans, recognizing in them a kindred spirit, a race that had been tested in the fires of adversity and emerged stronger. And at the heart of it all was Lexi, now a general and a leader of her people. She had never sought power or glory, but she had been called to serve, and she had answered that call with everything she had. On the anniversary of the final battle, a ceremony was held to honor the fallen and to celebrate the victory that had been won. Lexi stood before a vast crowd, her eyes scanning the sea of faces before her. "We stand here today because of the courage and the sacrifice of those who came before us," she said, her voice ringing out across the silent throng. "We stand here because of heroes like Kazalar, who gave his life so that we might live." She paused, her gaze distant, as if seeing something beyond the horizon. "But most of all," she continued, "we stand here because of the strength that each and every one of us carries within. The strength that comes from having faced the greatest challenges that any species could ever face, and from having emerged victorious. We are the children of Earth," she declared, her voice rising to a crescendo. "We are the guardians of this world and of all worlds. And we will never, ever back down from a fight." As the crowd erupted in cheers, Lexi looked up at the sky, where the stars were just beginning to emerge. She knew that Kazalar was there somewhere, watching over her, proud of what they had accomplished together. And she knew that as long as humanity held on to the lessons it had learned, as long as it remembered the strength that had carried it through its darkest hour, there was no challenge it could not overcome, no frontier it could not conquer. The future was bright, and it belonged to them, the children of Earth, the warriors of the greatest training ground in the universe. And they were ready for whatever it might bring.